All right, let's get after it. Submitting a wholesale offer. Now, I've actually done trainings on pretty much everything we're going to talk about. I've done a training on how to underwrite a deal. I've done a training on how to start a wholesale deal in Transaction Desk. But this one, I'm just going to kind of tie it all together. And so let's get started. So, submitting a wholesale offer. So you should have a list of buyers to start with. You should have a general idea of what you're looking for. If you cultivate and create some relationships with investors, you get their buy boxes, you understand what they're looking for, and then you can go hunt like you're on the, you're employed really. So my suggestion is if you don't have investors already, start making those connections. There's investors on, biggerpockets.com. There's investors in Facebook groups. There's so many Tampa Bay investor Facebook groups. It's crazy. There's so much activity in those groups. So join those if you haven't. There's investors, I have a ton of investors. My list is pretty expansive. But you should have your own investors, right? It's always more beneficial to you to sell a deal to your own investor than to have to JV with me or JV with, another agent in our office that has the investor, because then it cuts into your assignment fee. And so it's always more beneficial to sell your own deal financially. And so if you don't have a list of investors, absolutely start generating that list, start generating conversations, and understanding buy boxes. And once you have, even if you have just one investor, you're employed, like you have their buy box, what they want, it's time to go hunt. So definitely, have a list of buyers and work that every week, make it a goal of adding, 5 investors a week, like legit end buyer investors who are looking for buy and holds or fix and flips or short-term rentals, long-term rentals, multifamily, whatever it is. Understand what their buy box is, and now you're employed to go hunt. So absolutely should have a list of buyers that you are working on behalf. And then how many offers should you be submitting? I mean, minimum 1 or 2 a day. Ultimately you should try to submit, 20 a week. It's a numbers game. And so if you're not submitting offers, you're for sure not going to have any deals. So it's really important to make sure that you are hitting your KPIs submitting offers in terms of finding wholesale deals is KPI number 1, right? How many offers can you get out? How many deals can you underwrite and submitting offers on them? And so there's no statistic behind exactly how many offers you have to submit to get a deal. All I know is you need to be submitting offers, so if you can do 1 a day, awesome. If you can do 2 a day, even better. Like you double your chances of getting a deal. 3 a day, 4 a day, 5 a day. Like the more offers you submit, the more opportunities you're going to get. And so just keep that in mind. It's really important to, be on top of your game submitting offers. Let's just dive right in, right? So first off, you have a list of buyers, you have a list of investors, you know what they want, and you go out hunting and you find a deal that meets one of your investor buy boxes, and you have to underwrite it. You have to understand the numbers. Underwriting is understanding the after repair value and running the scope of work to understand what it's going to cost to renovate that property and then ultimately sell that property. And so in the community, let's start here. In the community, under learning, right? So where Investcor University is, inside here, you're going to find working with motivated sellers. And then you're going to find how to underwrite deals. This is I think it's a 25-minute training. It's a 30-minute training. And so watch that one if you want to. But the point that I'm driving you to this area is that here is the template. So you download the template, right? And the way that I do it, it was made in Google Sheets, but it's an Excel file. But the way that I do it is I have it in my Google Drive. So if you want to upload it to your Google Drive, and it's a named template, and I have an underscore so it stays at the top. And so every time I underwrite a deal, all I do is right click on it, make a copy, and it creates a copy. I always keep my template. I need a fresh template every time I do this, right? So copy of template, and then I'm going to go to the property that we're going to underwrite. I'm going to grab the address and rename this the property address. Click OK. And now I'm going to open up that template. And so there's 2 tabs of this template. It's pretty simple. First is the subject, property, and the comps. And then the second one is the scope of work that I'm going to briefly go through it. I don't want to take too much time on the scope, because if you really want to understand how to do all of these, I've already done it in the video right here. Watch this video. It's how to underwrite deals. Watch that video. I go into in depth on how to fill out this template. And so what we do is, first off, we're going to pull our comps. So again, anything in yellow is essentially what we have to fill in. And so I right click and I paste special, because if you just paste in there, it gets rid of the yellow and it comes in all funky. So I just paste that in, and then I'm going to go price. They're asking 200, and I'm not going to fill all this out, but you get the gist. So add the beds and baths, add the square footage. Square footage is the big one. I need to add it because that calculates some certain things. So 1532. So 1532. Active days on market, I think it's 29 or whatever. Pool, lot acres, this one is 0.28. And so the point of this is to then pull your comps in and list their sold price, their beds, their baths, their square footage, their year built. And it's very easy to look at these and go, oh, these are good comps. Is it renovated? This is the big one, right? Is it renovated? Yes. You want to try to find 3 comps that have been renovated, because that shows you what your true ARV is, right? And so you go through and fill all this out. You find your comps, you fill all this out, and then how this template works. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to go with that. But what we do is we put in the sold price per square foot, and then it averages it out, the SP by square foot. It averages it, and then it multiplies it by our square footage here, and it gives us our estimated ARV. So while we know that ARV is truly not calculated off sold price per square foot, it just gives us a general idea, right? And so if it looks like a good deal, you may want to jump into these comps and just verify that your ARV looks good. Make sure the adjustments are correct of what an appraiser looks at. But don't, it's just a quick way to estimate ARV. Okay. So with that being said, I'm looking at this property. It's in Mulberry. It's not a very desirable area, but I was just trying to find one that we could use. And so what I did first was I opened up my market conditions. I hope it doesn't kick one of those out. Let me open a tab. Okay. So I open up my market conditions, and I just do this very quickly just to see if there's good value here or good comps to then further pursue actually fully underwriting it. So I scroll all the way down. I go to MLS sold listings, and then I sort by distance. So it pulls up the closest ones that have sold in the last 3 months. Why do we only go 3 months? Because an investor, when they buy it, it takes them about 2 to 3 weeks to buy it. Then it's going to take them 2 to 3 months to rehab it. Then they're going to list it, and it's going to sit on the market for 30 to 60 days. And then they're under contract, and then they're selling it. Well, if you use comps from 4 to 6 months, those comps are gone for the next appraiser to use. So they're kind of irrelevant to us. We want to have dialed in 90-day comps. So by the time they list it, those comps that we used are still there. Does that make sense? So I just found, I went in here and I'm looking around, and I'm like, I'm trying to find the highest sold price, within a mile. I like to be a half mile, but I will go up to a mile, especially in Mulberry. Mulberry is, a little bit more rural. So opening that up probably makes a little more sense. But I was just scanning through here. This one was 277, 310, 275, 285, 332. And so I just grabbed a few. And what I do is I right click and then open a new tab, and it pulls it up, and it gives me the ability just to quickly, is it renovated? Yep. This one's completely renovated, and that's staged. You can just tell right away. So that's a good comp. That one was renovated. So I just found 3 of them. I already have them open. And so like this one, is it renovated? I was looking at it. Yep. Absolutely renovated. Right. So great comp. And then this one and this one. So I just found 3, right? So they're all, well, this one was not fully renovated, but it was clean. And so I'm just going to use them for this purpose. But you want to find good comps to support true value while you're running your numbers. And so I'm not going to put all the addresses in usually, because if you're going to pitch this to an investor, it really helps if you fill this out to the, fully, and then we can use this data. Like if you get it under contract, we can use this data to then send to the investor to say, hey, here's good comps. Here's where they sold in the last 3 months. Like most wholesalers put together this crap text or crap email and don't give good data. They pull comps from a year ago, and it's all garbage. And so us as licensees and real estate professionals, and part of the Investcor family, like we do it the right way. Our reputation, our numbers mean something. And when we send a deal to an investor, we want them to go, I know this brand, they're fantastic. Their numbers are always dead on. And we have built that reputation of knowing how to successfully and properly underwrite deals. And so really important that you, first of all, you go through this so you understand what the true ARV is, but also to, support your deal to the investor. And so ultimately the only thing that really matters when, like, obviously to look at it and say, okay, these are good comps. The acreage is the same. Your built is close. The square footage is close. The baths are close. The beds are close, yada, yada, yada. Right. So it's a good visual, but really what happens is this sold price per square foot. So let's just grab these. So 183.87. I just hit Control C, and then I'm going to paste values only. And then I'm going to grab the next one, Control C, paste values only, grab the next one, Control C, paste values only. And what happens is here, it averages it out, right? So divided by 3, it pulls those, divides it by 3. And then here it multiplies this square footage by this average, and it gives us an estimated ARV of 304. So this one sold at 320. This one sold at 280. This one sold at 330. It averages out at 304. Okay, so let's say 304 we determine is probably conservative. We always want to be conservative, right? If we can underwrite a deal and it can be conservative, it's a deal all day, right? And then what we do is we go into our rehab. So let's look at rehab, and I'm just going to estimate this. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. If you want to see the scoping video on how to go through this scope of work, go back to the community right here, watch this video. I go through it in very high detail. Okay. So I'm just going to say that this rehab, let's just guess it's 1,532 square feet. So 1,532, we're going to say $50. So we're going to say it's a $75,000 rehab. All right. So right now, with everything that's kind of calculated already, it calculates demo based off square footage. So it automatically puts it there. It also, our design, we don't even, let's say we're not going to use a design on this one. But ultimately, I want to get to 75,000 minus 19,870. So I need about 55,000. So this one is 1,000. So I'm just going to add that in, and it gets us to, we'll go 50. So it gets us to almost 75,000. All right. So, but you have gone through this template, this scope, and filled it out accurately. You figured out what the appliances cost, what the interior, exterior paint costs. Like there's formulas built into here that really dial in your scope. So make sure you understand how to do this, watch the other video, and do it properly. All right. And then it adds, oh, shoot. So technically I was right. So really, we always have to add a 10% contingency, 10% to the total scope, because there's always something that's wrong. We do that, and we explain that to our investors that, hey, we think it's 75, but we added a contingency which got us higher than 75, just so you know. And they appreciate that. They know if it's a professional investor, professional flipper, they know that they need a 10% contingency. So let's say that this is 55. Which gets us to our 74 with our 10% overrun on construction. We're looking at about 80,000. Okay. That is conservative and good, proper way to do it. I don't know how to say it. So what that does is that brings our estimated rehab over here. Okay. And so how this works is we go ARV times 0.7. Now, I'm not going to dive too much into this, but some investors are 70% all in, some are 80% all in. Depends on who you're talking to. Again, understand who your investor is. Cash buyers are typically can go 75 or 80 because they don't have all the closing costs. People they use hard money and leverage. Usually they have to be more conservative because they have those upfront closing costs. But one of the big things that I love about 0.7 is that if you, for example, you go to you renovate it and you go to sell it and it doesn't sell, you have the ability to do a DSCR cash out refi, pull your capital back out, essentially burr the property, right? Pull your capital back out and rent it in cash flow. Now, if you're at 0.75 or 0.8, you're trapping capital into the deal, right? Because with closing costs of the refi and all that, like the best way to do this, I love to run it at 0.7 to start, because if I can get the deal at 0.7, it's a deal all day long. Every investor is going to take it for one, as long as they're buying in the area or whatever. But also, we have a second exit strategy for our investor to be able to burr the property and hold it if they have to, if it doesn't move. So what this does is it's ARV times 0.7 less the rehab. So it gets us to 132 that the investor should pay, less our 10,000 wholesale fee. And you can change this to whatever you want your wholesale fee to be, but I just have it general at 10 grand. So that gets me down to 122 of an offer. Okay. This property is listed at 200. It's been on 26 days, but again, doesn't mean you can't submit this offer. Right? You never know what they're dealing with or if they need it to move or whatever, but just to have a conversation with the listing agent. Hey, I know it's much lower than what the ask price is. These are our numbers. You can even submit them this template and say, look, here's where we're at. Well, maybe not all of it, maybe the scope and the comps, because you don't want them to see that there's a $10,000 wholesale fee on there. But you can use this data somehow, between the scope, maybe a screenshot of the scope or something, and the comps that you used, and to figure out after per value, and you explain how the numbers work. Like one thing that I'll take a little bit of time and explain is when we're looking at 0.7, like 70% all in, and it leaves 30%. A lot of agents think that it's 30% profit, and it's not even close. It's not 30% profit, right? So 30% profit, that 30%. That holds inside of it. First off, when they resell it, there's capital gains tax, right? And so secondly, when they resell it, they have, closing costs. Then they have realtor fees on top of that. So their closing costs to sell it are higher than when they bought it, but they do have closing costs on the front end. So they have double closing costs, right? And then they have their holding costs, right? There's no holding costs built into this. So they have holding costs throughout the deal. And then they have profit. So there's actually 5 things that go into that 30%. Closing costs on the front end, closing costs on the back end, capital gains tax at the end of the day, and then their holding costs, right? So if they hold it for 6 months, that's a lot, on a hard money loan, that's a lot of holding costs, utilities, HOA dues, interest only payments. Like there's a lot that goes in that holding cost, and then profit. So don't get, if you get an agent or somebody who's like, 30, all in for 70%, anybody would take that deal. Well, yeah, but there's a lot, it's not just 30% profit. So understanding how to explain that helps. And so that gets us down to 122. And then and this shows me too, like my ARV time, like let's say that it's worth 304, and then we go 75% cash out refi. And that gives me $15,000 at closing, but there's closing costs associated with that refi, right? So it might cost me $5,000 to refi it. And so I might get 10 grand back. So I actually pulled 10 grand out, which is fantastic. Now, does it cash flow? So let's look at Rentometer. I pay $60 a year for this. It's fantastic. Let's drop in an address. Control C, Control V. I'm going to go 4 beds. 1.5 more. It goes back 12 months. I like to say 6 months. I like to say smart radius, especially in a rural area, but we'll see what it comes up with. So the average is 2180. So I base this off the average. So I go estimated rent is 2180.
And then our monthly taxes, what are the taxes here? 1445. They're going to go up, but we'll just base it off 1500 divided by 12 is 125. And so we do have a positive cash flow, but not much, right? So worst case scenario, the investor could pull, their 10 grand out and then cash flow a little bit. This also has management in place. So it's hands off. Everything's rehab, so you don't have to worry about CapEx. And if you have to hold it for a while, you have to, but at least it's a positive cash flow. You'd love to see this at least, 300, 400 would be nice. But at the end of the day, as long as you're not losing money, that's a good day. But at least you have two exits, right? And so that's underwriting the deal. So you find the deal, you underwrite the deal. Let's say it makes sense for your investor. You're just going to submit it anyways. Even if you're $75,000 lower, let's submit it anyway. So what we do here is we go back to the listing. We push this little TD up here to push this listing to transaction desk. Creating transaction desk. And then I'm using the template of wholesale deal. Selling agent, I like to use the wizard. Create. And I just want to show you what it pulls in. So I go through the wizard. Steps 1 and 2 are really nothing, so don't worry about those. Step 3 is contact. So it pulls in the buyer, Investcor Holdings, right? So that is the buying entity that we use. Investcor Realty, the selling agent, which is going to be you, the listing agent. Closed title is our title company. Although, if it's an MLS deal, you're probably going to be using their title company. So I'd have to change that out. If you're direct to seller, just leave closed title. Walter, that's my guy. He does all of our creative stuff, and they do a fantastic job. And so make sure the contacts are all right. And next. And then it pulls in the as-is contract, the licensee disclosure. Okay, you have to disclose that the buying entity is owned by a licensee. The flood disclosure, but again, the flood disclosure shouldn't be in here, actually. I'll have to delete that out. Flood disclosure should be provided by the seller. Is there? Yes, they have attachment. So flood disclosure, property disclosure, HOA disclosure. Okay. So I would delete that out. There's some wrong things in here. I'm going to have to change this. I'm not sure why any of that would be in here for a wholesale deal. I guess I remember why I did it. So if you're direct to seller and they don't have any of that stuff, then you would provide that to them because you want them to do a seller property disclosure, HOA disclosure, flood disclosure. You want them to do all that for us to have. So that's why I loaded it in there. Sorry, I had a brain fart there for a second. But since this is an on-market MLS listing, they already have this stuff. So I'm just going to delete the stuff out. Okay. So if you were direct to seller, you'd have that no brokerage relationship agreement. Like you would have them sign that so they understood that we are not representing them in this transaction, right? And so at this point, it's just going to be these two documents. And then here's our pre-approval letter and our assignment agreement that loads in automatically for you to use, hopefully, when we assign this, right? So, and it used to, I don't know why it doesn't do it anymore, but it used to load in transaction desk when you pushed from MLS to transaction desk. It used to actually load these attachments right into your documents. So you had them, but now they don't, or I guess they don't anymore. So you have to download these and upload them so you can sign them, or so we can sign them. So you would do that also. You would download these attachments and upload them here. This is where you click add, drop files, go to your downloads, grab them, upload them. And so then you have them in here and then done. Then all we're going to do is fill out the contract, right? So we're going to open up the as is. Investcor Holdings, you're going to add the seller if you know it. We're going to offer our 122. And sometimes maybe even go a little bit lower so you can go up higher. That's up to you. This is a pretty low ball offer already. So
I'd probably just start there. And then obviously if it's an on MLS and they have their own title company, you would change all of that out. And then you just go through it. You know, I'm sure you understand how to fill out a contract. If you don't, we can do a separate contract class. But you go through, fill it all out, and then you can, you know, switch back and forth to your transaction forms. So let's grab the licensee disclosure. And that is going to say on here that James Roy Investcor Holdings LLC has an active license and is acting as a buyer. So it's already written in there for you. And then when you're ready and everything's filled out, you're going to push it to Authentisign. If you don't have Authentisign, I suggest you use it. It's like $130 a year, and everything is contained within Transaction Desk through Authentisign. So you push it over to Authentisign. And we'll push that document, that one document, and then you're just going to add documents. So documents, add, and then whatever's listed in there. So we're going to add the licensee disclosure. We're going to add the pre-approval letter. There's no assignment yet, so we're not adding that. And then those 3 disclosures that we uploaded will also show here. We would add those too, right? So you add all the documents. Then your signers are going to be from transaction. You're going to grab Investcor Holdings, which is myself. You're going to add me. And it's going to throw Investcor Holdings in as the buyer, right? So you filled all this out, and then we're going to change this to offer. The name of the PDF at the end of the signing is whatever you have here. So that's why I'm changing it. And so you go through it, make sure you fill everything out, right? Put initials on all the disclosures that you uploaded. Anything that's pushed from Transaction Desk into Authentisign that is an editable form, it knows where all the boxes go. But if it's a PDF that you have uploaded, Authentisign has no idea of where, you know, signature blocks go or initials. So on that note, you have to actually upload it. So looks like this is a little outdated. So I'll go back and upload the most recent one that we have. But any of the seller property disclosure or flood disclosure or anything that's down here, you're gonna have to, you know, drag and drop initials and signatures wherever to fill those out properly. And then you send over to me. Next, send. It's going to send it over to me. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to sign everything. And then it will give you the PDF of a signed offer. And at that point, my suggestion is to call the agent, like if you can build rapport, because they get lowball offers all the time and they just discard them. Like they don't even look at them. They don't even entertain them. Now, we know that license law, code of ethics says that they have to present all offers to their seller, which, you know, who could ever prove if they did or didn't. But my suggestion is to call the listing agent, because building the rapport with the listing agent who gets deals like this, maybe they get a lot of these. And maybe you can build that rapport with them like, hey, you know, my name's James. I'm with Investcor Realty. We work with a ton of investors that look for properties like this. You know, if you're ever, getting something like this, we'd love to know about it right away. Obviously, there's clear cooperation. We're not trying to violate that or anything, but building that relationship with the listing agent, maybe even if they list it, they still pick up the phone and text you like, hey, we just listed this one. It's, or even the day before, because you can do 24 hours of marketing before you have to put it live. So maybe you're on that pre 24 hour list where you get information about it before it goes live. And so, but building the relationship with the listing agents who have these listings, it could pay dividends. And so I would call them and talk to them and say, hey, look, I know it's low. These are the numbers. This is why it's low. I don't expect your seller to accept it, but, just keep it just in case, he can't sell it, and just know it's there. And so, having that conversation is, it sets you up so much better for success in this deal than just sending it over blind without calling, without doing anything. So call the agent, tell them it's coming. It's well below what the list price is. Tell them, say it's 122. My apologies. And one thing that I do want to go through here is this is going to default to be assignable.
Where am I? So let's talk about this inspection. We always try to get 15 days. Start with 15. Okay. Start with 15 because it gives us more time to assign it or bring in a B2C contract for a double close. Start with 15. If you start with 10, they're going to beat you up and get you to 7. If you start with 15, you might land at 10, but if you start at 10, they're going to beat you up to 7. So start high, and they might come back and argue with you. And something to pay attention to. If you can get, like, let's say they say, oh, we want 10, and you look at your calendar and you're like, okay, if we execute today, today's day 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you count the days, and date of execution is day 0, right? So if you count the days and you land on a Saturday and it's 10, then guess what? It defaults in our contract to Monday to 5 p.m. It defaults, if it lands on a holiday or a weekend, it defaults to the next business day at 5 p.m., which would be Monday. Well, I guess if it's a holiday, it could be a different day. But if it's on a weekend, it actually kicks to Monday at 5 p.m. So you can say, okay, we'll do 10, but now you know that you actually got 12. So that's a little trick if you didn't know that. But it always defaults to assignment. What the heck? We'll get there right here. Assignability. So may assign, but not be released from liability under this contract. You're probably going to get kickback on that. When you're dealing with agents, you always get kickback on that, but we just default it. Just default it there and just say, look, this is how we've gotten around this. Look, we have a list of investors, looking to take this, and be honest. You can be honest with them. We have probably 10 investors that want this deal from us. And we want to be able to make sure that we, you can say whatever you want, but we've always said, look, it's just easier if it's assignable for us because we might move it like internal. Like internally, we have multiple investors that work out of our office, and we might move, move the contract to a different investor in our office, and we just want to have the ability to do that so there's no hiccups. We want to close on this. Like we're going to close on this, but it might just be a different entity in our office, and just makes it easier for us to move that contract. And like we said, we're not being released from the liability, but it gives us the ability and flexibility to move it internally, which gives us the higher probability of closing. And so you can create a script like that of why it's important for us to have that, because most agents kick it back. If they decide that, nope, we're not accepting it, sorry, then just go ahead and click may not assign it, and then we have to double close it. If we have to double close it, it's unfortunate because there's capital gains costs that have to be taken off the top first, but it's still a deal, right? And so come up with the script of why it makes sense to have the assignability clause on there because of internal potentially movement of the contract to a different investor inside of our office. And it's all true. Like inside of our office, we have 5 investors. And so, we're not lying. And so that's it. Go through, fill out all the contract, sign it, send it over for signatures, call the agent, submit the offer. A lot of times they're not going to get accepted, but get through the repetitions of filling out offers and underwriting deals so it becomes quick to you. I can underwrite a deal and get an offer over in like a half hour. If I find the deal, from finding it to comping it to underwriting it to getting the contract out to calling the agent, 30 minutes, right? The longest part is finding the deal. MLS, obviously you probably already do this, but in the MLS, like when I'm searching, I go through and add, under this right here, additional fields, I added public remarks. And down here, you can add, you put a asterisk in front of it, and any variation of this word will return it. So, and I put investor, TLC, fixer. You can put investment, but I think investor qualifies for that. So I'm looking for listings that in the public remarks, the listing agent has said needs TLC. This is a fixer upper, could be a fix and flip, calling all investors, all those little phrases they put in there, and it pulls those back. Right. And so I did that. I did single family residence. I did my surrounding 4 or 5 counties. I did under 200 grand. I want a 3.2 because resale value, those sell faster, right? And that's all I put in there. And it returned, 32 matches. Go through and underwrite them. Submit offers. Ones that have been on the market for a long. Oh, the other thing I did was, I think I did. Oh, I didn't. So sometimes I'll do active days on market. You can throw on 45 plus, and now you're looking at 17 listings that have been on the market for a little while, and whoever owns it probably wants it to move, right? So maybe they're a little more flexible. If they've only been on the market for 2 days, they're not going to, for sure, aren't going to entertain your lowball offer or I hate that word lowball, but your realistic offer, right? Let's call it realistic offer. It's never a lowball offer; it's a realistic offer. And so, but that's it. And calling the agent, submitting the offer, and repetition and follow up. Follow up is key. Put it in your calendar. Put it in your calendar to the next week, maybe a week that you follow up with that agent. Put a note in your calendar like, hey, follow up with Denise at Remax on 123 ABC Street. We submitted an offer of 120. Here's the MLS number. And so then you can just grab the MLS number, come back in here, drop the MLS number in this area, look it up. If it's still active, reach back out. Hey, Denise, just checking in. I see it's still active. Just want to make sure that that our offer is still good. Let me know if there's anything you need from me. It might not go anywhere, but you're building relationships with agents that might get more properties like this, right? And so follow-up is so key. But that's it. This video went for long enough, 36 minutes. So we are done. If you have any questions, let me know. Hopefully this gave some clarification and some clarity, and start making offers. Make offers. This is for our internal team at Investcor Realty, but make offers. The only way you're getting contracts is by making offers. See you.